Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. It's going to be with you guys today. So, on this day of Biden's inauguration, I think that it's incumbent upon all of us, if we want to be prepared for intellectual combat. When I say intellectual combat, I mean simply the combat against the ideas of the administration, not the people, the ideas, because people are not their ideas. Ideas are simply in our body, and we are vessels to manifest ideas. So, in preparation for intellectual combat, it's important for us to understand what the battlegrounds are for this administration. So I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on this topic, but one of the most important battlegrounds is going to be the field of economics. So, what is economics? Economics is simply the science of human interaction as it relates to exchanging goods and commodities. That's all it is. That's all it is. Now, of course, there are people that would say, well, Christian, what about macroeconomics? Macroeconomics does not exist. That is simply a broad abstraction that takes away from individual actions, which are more empirical and are more real. It's okay to analyze the broader systems, but don't call that economics. Simply call that abstract ideas of economics or whatever. Microeconomics is what matters. So, Joe Biden is claiming dominion over the realm of economics by filling up certain cabinet positions in certain government agencies with social justice radicals, with social justice people who are more oriented and motivated by certain ideas of how the economy should act, rather than how the economy does act and must act in accordance to its nature or its proper, most righteous role. So, here's this article from Politico, which says, Wall Street, get ready. First of all, whenever you're telling a collection of traders and investors, many of whom provide a lot of value to people, to get ready in a very ominous way, I get concerned because you're villainizing them immediately and you're threatening them, and I don't like that very much. Let's continue. It's the money that matters. President-elect Joe Biden, now President Joe Biden, made a public splash with his top climate nominees, John Kerry, which I have no idea why John Kerry's in there, and Gina McCarthy. Less showy but equally influential are the dozens of accounting and economic wonks that will be installed throughout Washington's financial services ecosystem. Steeped in sustainability and social justice, they're likely to have a deep impact on corporate transparency in the flow of capital. Why in the world? What moral impetus does the government have to have impact on the flow of capital? When capital is generated by individuals, typically in a voluntary way, and traded by individuals in a voluntary way, what's the impetus? Oh, social justice. More on that later. The appointees and new hires will populate the top echelons of Treasury and the SEC for starters, the Security Exchange Committee, and they will also have purchased at under the radar bodies that govern accounting, and accountability, I suppose. Mortgage-backed securities, export credit in the $4 trillion municipal bond market. So Janet Yellen is particularly concerning. And she has said that she is going to be focused a lot on this racial idea, right? So she says she has endorsed a carbon tax and is going to quite literally try to shape the flow of money from the Treasury, dear God, through this paradigm of trying to stop climate change. Look, America cannot stop climate change. No country can stop climate change. It happens. If you want to really tackle climate change, China's going to have to pay up. Right? There's going to have to be so many things that are going to have to happen. And almost all of them are obtrusive to individual rights. Stewardship does not have to be executed by the government. Stewardship can be executed by individuals if you enable them to. The EPA has been one of the most destructive things in existence for the environment. If you don't believe me, look at the Gold King water mine spill, which literally tainted an entire river with toxins. And the EPA, through absolute immunity, shielded itself from being sued. When the government commits atrocities, it's simply a mistake, and they can sue themselves from accountability because they have a monopoly on force. But when people do it, it's a moral outrage. We have to punish them. The double standard should not exist. Government atrocities are just as bad as individual atrocities because government is nothing more than the collection of individuals. Yet, the EPA gets to violate the environment with impunity, and it is held as the steward, the ultimate steward of the environment. And when Trump says, or when other politicians say, the EPA, they're not necessary for stewardship, they are villainized and attacked as people who want to destroy the environment. So we've linked our ideas of how the environment works and how economics works with how government works. We've merged two concepts. They're like oil and water, which should not be mixed because they don't cohere. Moving on. So, Gensler, a Goldman Sachs alumnus, and Biden's pick for the Security Exchange Committee. If you don't know who that is simply the organization that protects investors and protects people with consumer protections and overseas consumer protections so that there's not another crash. Crashes typically happen because the government thinks that it can protect people a little bit too much, but that's for a different story. And so he basically, progressives like him because this guy was a part of Wall Street, but he left Wall Street and he worked for MIT. So apparently being a part of Wall Street is a cardinal sin, but here's how they're thinking. If you know the inner workings of Wall Street and you can disable Wall Street, we want you. So these nominees are almost entirely built off of antipathy towards Wall Street, towards value creators. That's basically what it is. And you had a Labor Department who believes economic growth and environmental stewardship go hand in hand. Well, I agree, but do you need the government to do that? You have so much of this stuff that is just universally concerning to me. And as I read this article, I read about 5 or 6 times, I'm just trying to figure out what in the world is going on. You know, and you already have so many big financial investing firms like JP Morgan saying that we need to focus on the racial wealth divide and reduce systemic racism, all this kind of stuff. Why do you think they're saying this stuff? Because they are scared. They're scared of the hammer of government beating down upon them. They're scared. They're trying to become a little bit more modern in their thinking, or I suppose. And this Gensler fellow, who has said, as this quote here says, that we have to focus a lot on greenhouse gas emissions, racial equity, executive pay, and other What? You are assuming this moral idea, that... Jesus. Excuse me. Gensler is assuming that the government has a direct role in doing all this stuff, and that it is the demands of justice they do. This is the problem with social justice economic policies. They invert the demands of ideology and make those demands a part of the demands of justice. All justice really is, my friends, is the securing of your natural freedom. You don't agree with me? Okay. If I lock you up, if I tie your hands, if I muffle you with duct tape or whatever, if I were to do that to every human being in the world, how many concepts would be able to be manifested in that moment except bondage? Now, you could say, Christian, justice is how we deal with those things. I agree with you. But what is the main thing that is being assailed whenever an injustice happens towards us? It is our rights. Rights are how we live morally and responsibly. They are a part of our humanity. So even if you have ideas of an Aristotelian justice, that justice is like a mean or whatever, or ultimately it has to emerge, if it's going to be coherent, from an understanding that human beings have a level of dignity towards them, and that things that violate that dignity are bad. It has to emerge from that. And rights are the best way to encapsulate that without getting hooked up in political, subjective considerations. So in that sense, this social justice idea is bogged down in subjective considerations and stays there and antagonizes people, rather than sticking to what is objectively true, their rights, and trying to reimagine the economy in this utopian way. That's a danger. Antagonistic danger. There's an article from Axios saying the same exact thing. Wall Street power shift. Gensler, again. Gensler, Sherrod Brown is pushing this. And Axios is saying that Biden is going to go to the left of Obama and Clinton in taxes, spending, and regulation. Now, the more consequentialist mind would say, oh, taxes are going to go up, blah, blah, blah. Or, spending goes up. That's wrong because of the rights violations. We cannot engage in relativism when we critique these things. So, again, the paradigm from which a lot of people are flowing from. Race, gender equality, climate change. This is what Yellen's going to be using as her calculus. And they've even announced they're going to replace GDP. They're going to replace all of these traditional metrics with considerations of groups. Considerations built upon a flawed understanding of their natures as individuals. When you cannot interact with the truth, you interact with falsehood. Biden's economic agenda is predicated entirely on falsehood. And when you engage in falsehood, you know what happens, of course. Bad things happen. Tyranny happens. We have to begin to engage in intellectual combat against this kind of stuff. Because if we don't, my friends, not to be a doomsday prophet here, but if we don't, I'm afraid that we're going to lose the vision of the American experiment more quickly than we ever got it. Think about it. As always, my friends, I love you, and let's please stay pensive. Stay in the fight, my friends, and stay pensive. I love every one of you. Bye-bye. And oh, by the way, please, if you can, donate to my PayPal, please. It helps me a lot. Thank you. Hey, stay pensive. Bye-bye.